Bitcoin traded as high as $93,000 almost this morning and is once again back below 90,000, still chopping around these levels after seeing insane volatility over the past 5 days. All of this leading into Trump's crypto summit at the White House tomorrow, although I don't think Trump himself will be attending, which will be a star-studded gala with regulators, David Sachs, and of course, the leaders of the crypto industry. Because we can't agree on anything, nobody can even get the list right for who's going to actually be attending. We'll discuss that today, but very clear that a lot of big news likely to be dropped tomorrow. Will we actually get a strategic Bitcoin reserve? Will we get an announcement on how taxes will be structured, or will this be yet another political nothing burger for the industry? Yago and I are going to discuss all this and more right now on Bitcoin and Bullshit.
Let's go.
What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button that is right down below. The good news, Yago, is that, as we've loosely called the show Bitcoin and Bullshit, I've been hearing a lot less about the bullshit side over the past couple of weeks. It seems like after Libra, it's just been a complete washout.
Well, we're in a very interesting phase, right? So it feels very much like meme coins have Trump killed meme coins, and then
that was his plan, guys. It was all to kill meme coins. It wasn't because he wanted to make money.
I actually think this is quite reflective of a lot of what it seems that Trump is doing, which is to take to do extreme and unexpected things. Which, through the chaos, maybe create the change that change we can believe in. So, it's hard to understand some of the rest of the activity without that frame of reference, right? So, like the fact that the tariffs are on the closest allies rather than on anyone else. The fact that he's gone to war, not just gone to bat, it seems, for Russia, but is going to war with all of Europe. It's hard to interpret this as I think the most charitable interpretation is that he is causing chaos so that he can finally force people to sort of pay attention to what they should have always been paying attention to. So if it's Europe, they should have always been paying attention to the fact that they should have been building out their own defenses and providing greater contribution to world security. And if it's meme coins, it's to the fact that people should have always paid attention to the fact that this is going to, scammers are going to scam.
Did your invite get lost in the mail for the crypto summit tomorrow? Mine got lost in the mail, I think.
I'm very disappointed by the fact that I wasn't invited. I also wasn't invited to the royal wedding. And I feel like I'm being ignored on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah, I just didn't. I just didn't respond to my invite for the royal wedding, but I got mine, obviously. But here's who we have so far. So there's been a lot of debate, so much fake news. There's a fake spreadsheet going around X. It says it's CZ's going, and all these other people. To my knowledge, this is from conversations I've had with the team at the White House that we could get in touch with, and from Eleanor Terrett, who's been covering this very closely. This is as close as we can get right now. The only one that I know is not true here is that Charles Hoskinson basically has confirmed that he wasn't invited, as far as I know. But otherwise, it looks like it's going to be Michael Saylor, David Bailey, Matt Huang, JP Richardson, Kyle Samani, Zach Wyckoff, Sergey from Chainlink, Brian Armstrong, Vlad from Robinhood, Arjun from Kraken, Chris from Crypto.com, which people didn't believe me when I posted it. He confirmed that. And Brad Garlinghouse, CEO of Ripple. Of course, this means that the Bitcoiners are extremely pissed about everything, right? So they're very pissed about everyone not named Michael Saylor. Half of them are happy that David Bailey is going to be there. Half of them don't think that David Bailey, for some reason, qualifies. And the rest of this, obviously, is VCs, CEOs, and, shit coiners, as they like to call all of us who like these things. What do you make of all
look,
this?
I've got a bit of a rant here, but before I go into the rant, let me say a few positive things. I think the fact that David Bailey is going, well deserved. I think
Dude,
he's
he's the one who made this all happen. Of course, it's
Yeah,
well deserved.
absolutely. Great representative for the industry, great representative for Bitcoin. JP Richardson, JP from Exodus, he's a guy who just grinds, has been working for years, has built a publicly traded, a wallet that has become a publicly traded company, is incredibly successful. And what a lot of people don't realize about Exodus, it is the largest, most popular wallet in the world for Bitcoin holders. People don't recognize that. I'm really glad to see that JP is going to be there. He's like honest family man, salt of the earth entrepreneur. As for some of the rest, here's my rant. For years and years, I have been saying, and you've been saying, and a whole bunch of people have been saying, that Bitcoin needs to build its own native economy. It can't just be this, token that doesn't do anything, and that all of the innovation, all of the entrepreneurship, all of the activity, all of the investment is happening in other parts of the crypto space. Because if that's what happens, then what you end up with is a summit at the White House where you've got Brad Garlinghouse and you've got Vlad Tenev and you've got Sergey Nazarov, who I think, has built cool stuff and is a cool guy, but certainly is not a Bitcoiner. You get a summit of altcoiners instead of Bitcoiners. And this whinging is just such. Bitcoin maxis have been playing checkers for too long when they should be playing 3D chess. If we do not build a Bitcoin native economy and Bitcoin does not become a productive asset, this is what happens. You get an altcoin summit. And so, the work that we're doing with BitcoinOS, the work that we've done with Sovereign, and just generally the work that people like David Bailey and others in the space have been doing to build a native Bitcoin economy is crucial to maintaining the value and the prestige of Bitcoin going forward and forever.
So what I hear there, and at least my take, is that I have no problem with these people having a voice in politics for their interests. That's, whether they've earned it through donations or through building big things, that's viable and fair. We're just conflating the two and should have a Bitcoin summit and a crypto summit. But I think that that's just kind of wishful thinking when you have Trump as president. Obviously, that nuance is a little bit lost on him and probably just doesn't care enough. That's a
I think
personal wish list.
Here also there's just like a really big difference, which could be, and people point to all kinds of things and like, why is Bitcoin different from XRP? And well, what about Sol and et cetera, et cetera. But the very big difference really between all of these systems in BTC and all of the people who are sort of promoting BTC versus XRP or whatever is that the people who are promoting BTC are the people who are buying BTC, and the people who are promoting XRP are the people who are selling XRP. That's the real difference. And so it's weird, right? It would be weird. It would be upsetting if, the White House and the world more generally was not able to see that very, very stark difference. And I think that's the way we should be explaining that difference. It's really simple. BTC is promoted by those who buy it. XRP is promoted by those who sell it.
So then the question remains, you have the Sailors and Baileys, who are obviously Bitcoin buyers at any price, as you just described. Then you have maybe a Garlinghouse or a Sergey who, I don't know whether they're sellers or not. Garlinghouse is certainly a seller. I can't speak to Sergey. I'm not saying that, but who had some sort of allocation from creating a company, basically like founder shares, if you want to make an equivalency to stocks, who obviously wouldn't be buying their own stock. They're selling it when they get the opportunity. But then you have all these other people in between who have built effectively, it's exchanges, right? It's exchanges and VCs, right? Kyle Samani, obviously one of the biggest VCs at Multicoin. They were the first investors and raised for Solana. Then you have Brian, Vlad, Arjun from Sethi, Chris from crypto.com. These are all the leading exchange guys in the United States. So where do they fall? They're kind of in the in-between.
To me, they're not in the in-between. They've called this a crypto summit, and fair enough. What is crypto? Crypto is much bigger than Bitcoin, right? It's basically the idea that we can create cryptographically secured property rights, right? And that's much better than equity. It's much better than, shares which are secured by the courts of Delaware, because the courts of Delaware can just one day choose that you can't actually award, shares to your CEO or whatever. Despite the fact that the shareholders voted to do it. So So I think the fact that we are building an alternate system for resource allocation, for funding innovation, all of that is potentially very, very good, even though it also has opened the doors to many, many scams. And I think that there's a really, really clear distinction between this commodity asset, which is BTC, which nobody controls and it doesn't change, versus all of these other things which need VC capital. That doesn't turn them into a bad thing, right? The world's best medications, the world's best technologies, the world's largest, most successful companies were all funded by venture capital. It's a good thing. It means that people are taking risk on new technologies and new innovations. It just doesn't mean that they're building Bitcoin. They're building something totally different.
Which leads to a lot of conjecture about what will actually be announced tomorrow. Obviously, we don't know. We had the crypto reserve proposed by Trump on Truth Social on Sunday, right? He said XRP, Solana, and ADA specifically, and then followed up, obviously, with Bitcoin and Ethereum clearly will be there. Honestly, I was surprised that Ethereum was so obvious because I had not seen mention of that before, but he believed, obviously, Ethereum was obvious. Then you had Lutnick sort of backing off of that as Commerce Secretary, saying we view it as Bitcoin. These other things are great, but they're different. We're going to get a framework and announcement on Friday. So tomorrow, it seems like, if they're being truthful, that we're going to get a lot of clarity on what this reserve would look like and how they're going to treat Bitcoin versus altcoins. I mean, really interesting because the Secretary of Commerce is saying something very different than the president said in a Truth Social message.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I wouldn't call myself the biggest Trump fan, but I will say that generally speaking, Trump seems to be, for good or ill, extremely transparent.
He does what he says.
He does what he says. So it wouldn't surprise me if we end up. And then what also often happens is that people in administration walk it back, and then he will, like in a speech or on a Truth Social message, sort of walk back their walk backing. So it wouldn't surprise me if we actually end up with a reserve of Sol and Trump coin and who knows what else. Should that, I would like to see the government either not involved at all, or if they are involved, with the reserve of BTC, because I just don't. I don't think that governments outside of sort of sovereign wealth funds should be holding equities, or anything that's similar to an equity, right? These.
Well, I keep saying that we should have a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and if they want to, play around in the shitcoin casino that we all love so much, maybe not you, that should be in the sovereign wealth fund. Go ahead and throw that in there with TikTok shares.
I think fundamentally there's something that we should all realize about sort of the crypto industry, which is that Bitcoin has been a phenomenal success, like a once in 10 generations success. But so many projects, even if they're building something valuable, are trying to pretend to be Bitcoin because they want to ride on the coattails of that success. And so the reason there's sort of this confusion, right, between Bitcoin and the rest of the assets out there, and people try to make them seem very similar, is because they want to be able to say, yeah, we should also have a multi-trillion-dollar market cap. I think that's unnecessary because, if you're building something truly innovative and valuable, you're going to have you could potentially have a multi-trillion-dollar market cap, right? Like Google, like Meta, like Tesla, like Amazon. So I think you can build multi-trillion-dollar market cap things around Bitcoin as it continues to grow. Be that as it may, this confusion has worked. And so, the boomers of Congress and the boomers in the White House and the boomers in corporate, seats of power really can't make the distinction. And in fact, even a lot of people in the crypto space don't really make the distinction. Right. So it's worked. I think over time that is dissipating. And what's really been interesting about this market cycle has been how Bitcoin has really disentangled itself from all of the rest. And I think that is a sign. Yeah, that is a sign. We're starting to mature. People are starting to get it.
Yeah. And listen, this is actually really interesting because David Sachs, the crypto and AI czar who's holding this conference, just tweeted this actually less than an hour ago. You'll love this. Over the past decade, the federal government sold approximately 195,000 Bitcoin for proceeds of 366 million. If the government had held that Bitcoin would be worth over 17 billion today. That's how much it has cost American taxpayers not to have a long-term strategy. Now, that's obviously a very smart tweet in a vacuum. But ahead of him hosting the summit, where we've had both Lutnick and Trump say that we will get clarity on a reserve, should definitely maybe be a slight hat tip to what we're going to be looking at tomorrow.
Look, I think there's something else interesting that's happening in the market. Generally speaking, markets don't like uncertainty. And sort of an easy way to understand this is even if you really, really need to buy a new phone and you hear something good about phones, not even something bad, something good, like a new phone is going to come, which is going to be even better than all of the phones in the market, a new iPhone, you actually won't buy the phone, right? So even though the news is good and you really need a phone, you're not going to buy the phone. That's sort of the problem with uncertainty. It delays decisions into the future. And so I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is we're seeing BTC and crypto sort of underpriced because people are not sure. Should I be buying SOL? Should I be buying ADA? Is this reserve coming or not coming? It seems very, very likely that a reserve is coming. Trump has just been speaking about it too frequently for it to seem like a whim that is, forgotten. And the rest of his administration is talking about it as well. So whether you like it or not, it looks like a reserve is coming. And I think that the power that will signal is immense.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's been interesting that we haven't seen those altcoins sort of fly, but I think that the waters are so muddied right now with what will or won't that people are just gun shy to, at this point, take every tweet from anyone at its word and try to trade that. But Bitcoin will be there. I think it's important. So the obvious trade is just keep buying Bitcoin. But I will say the other thing that they've been doing over at World Liberty Financial, which I would argue Donald Trump has no part in, but it's certainly the company that represents him in the crypto market, and certainly his sons are involved. But they've been buying up everything and mostly Ethereum. So as of before these buys yesterday, I think it was about 56, 58% of their holdings were Ethereum. Well, they basically tripled that. They just bought another 10 million worth of Ethereum, 10 million worth of WBTC, and then 1.5 million of Move. And then today, if you didn't catch this news, this just happened. President Trump's World Liberty Financial partners with SUI to launch a strategic SUI reserve, which is funny because people think that meant the government was getting a SUI reserve. I'm watching this all in real time while we're talking, by the way. This came out 14 minutes ago during the show, but basically saying, hey, we're going into SUI too. But very, very clearly, World Liberty Financial, well, they're buying wrapped Bitcoin, which is a whole different kind of conversation from whether they're buying Bitcoin or not, but very heavily buying Ethereum, which I said we were kind of surprised was mentioned so passively as part of the strategy, and investing a lot in the tech side, layer ones and such. I mean, Move, is going to be the hot new thing. Apparently that's the language that Aptos and I believe SUI are built on. They're tech investing.
Yeah. Look, I mean, they're spreading bets fairly wide. I don't know how much that impacts policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does impact policy.
A lot of Ethereum, though. I mean, this is, it's the bulk of it is Ethereum. Everybody seems to be super depressed about Ethereum. I mean, listen, you can look at this. I mean, from a technical perspective, it's the most undervalued it's been in 17 months. If you look at any chart, whatever, by various metrics, just seems like the beaten down, it's going to zero, milady narratives maybe mean that you got an opportunity here.
I'm not sure that they're buying more ETH than BTC from an asset perspective. They might be.
They own more.
But it's hard to say, right? I mean, because World Liberty Financial was launched on Ethereum, and so the sort of like the most obvious thing you would buy would be ETH.
Yeah.
And so it's actually kind of interesting that in equal amounts they're also buying WBTC. They're certainly a focus there on majors. One of the other interesting things that happened recently was there was, I think it was last week. Who knows? The news moves so quickly now. Everything feels like it was months ago. But Bybit, I think the hack was last week.
True, yeah.
That 1.5 billion in ETH has already been converted to BTC. And
Tells you what North Korea thinks about these assets.
yeah. And so, and then sort of that conversion also happened through Thorchain and a couple of other sort of semi-dexes. One of the interesting things that I think has happened here is that Thorchain shut down deposits and withdrawals because they were underwater, right? They had liabilities that exceeded their assets for a while.
And you called it out, and then you backed off to be nice. I remember that.
Yeah, well, they managed to get rid of that problem by basically defaulting on the liabilities, which I'm not sure. You wouldn't be able to.
I mean, it sent their price down 70% of of the token. Yeah. So,
but usually, what you would see is sort of like the stakeholders or the equity holders take the first sort of beating, not the debt holders. With Thorchain, it was separate. It was the exact opposite. But the other thing is they allowed North Korea to transact without stopping deposits and withdrawals. And so there's something interesting there, right? I think we're in crime season. And that,
I mean, guys might remember people by the name of Charlie Shrem and Ross Ulbricht doing very much less gratuitous versions of that, landed them both in jail. Yeah. So I first of all, if I would be concerned if I was a Thorchain founder about doing this, because even though it might fly right now, it's not. This is the kind of thing which is evidence that sticks around for a good decade. With the statute of limitations. And then the second thing is, if I was a holder of the token, I would be equally concerned, right? Because one of the problems is they've demonstrated the ability to actually stop deposits and withdrawals. So it would be one thing if they said we can't, we're actually decentralized, we can't stop deposits and withdrawals. But the fact that they've already demonstrated it, and just 2 weeks later, they were not willing to take action for, the most sanctioned entity in the world, I think that's risky. Yeah. I mean, Tornado Cash are just some guys who programmed some code and allowed the world to do it without knowing who was using it and for what. And he's still, maybe he's out now. I can't even remember, but that case is still ongoing. Those guys potentially could be in jail for a very, very long time. And they just created the code. Right. They didn't know who was using it and for
nothing happened. Like, they launched the system and nothing happened for 5 or 6 years before they were arrested. So, these things sometimes they take time to play out. I'm hoping. Look, one of the ethical questions that we have is if we build truly decentralized systems, truly sort of cannot be evil systems, the systems that really are immutable, uncensorable, cannot be shut down, then there's nothing to stop anyone, North Korea or otherwise, from transacting. But right now we're in this weird middle ground where these projects actually do have it in their power to stop the transactions, and they choose not to. And that is very shaky ground.
Yeah, and in the midst of this, because it's the season for everything that can happen, we also have Mt. Gox wallet moving 12,000 BTC worth 1 billion. I mean, you've preceded Mt. Gox FUD in this space, but I haven't. It's been here since the day I arrived, and it's never materialized into anything meaningful. The selling part of it. I'm not saying Mt. Gox itself.
Well, look, it's the importance of it has been diminished all the time. Like $1 billion today of Bitcoin, it's a drop in the bucket, right? It's 1 week of Michael Saylor alone. So, or for that matter, it's 1 week of North Korea. it's a drop in the bucket. So it's never really been impactful in the past, and it's unlikely to be impactful in the future.
Right, decreasingly less impact with the size of the market increasing. I guess maybe not trying to predict what will necessarily happen tomorrow, but I think everybody clear that from a price perspective, we're likely to see a lot of volatility, right? I mean, even just in advance of this, we've seen swings of $12,000 on Bitcoin up and down on back-to-back days, right? I mean, really some of the craziest price action that we've ever seen. a lot of that just obviously in the context of the market uncertainty in general that you've discussed. But the reason this feels a little different to me is because there's a firm expectation that we will get clarity tomorrow on certain things. And every time we've had those kind of expectations, it becomes a political nothing burger where a bunch of people sit in a room and shake each other's hands and give hugs and high fives, and you don't get an answer. So like if tomorrow we are all now expecting, because of Lutnick and Trump, we are getting a Bitcoin strategic reserve announcement tomorrow, and they're like, we're looking at it, kind of like with the executive order, it could be pretty ugly.
You think,
or it would just go up $20,000 because
you think BTC could drop because nothing,
we don't get any more clarity, because it's more of the same and everybody's expecting it. I always think markets like trade, versus expectation, not reality.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't think, look, I think BTC could drop further because of overall macro and sort of US market issues, right? Inflation's going up. The market looks more and more likely to be already in recession, if not in recession soon. So yeah, I think the money spigot right now hasn't been turned on. It's likely to be turned on in the second half of this year. So I think BTC does well in the second half of this year, regardless of whether or not we get a reserve. If we get a reserve, it's going to be everything but with methamphetamines mixed in. So I don't know. Like
in this case.
Yeah. So my main thing is I wish I had more fiat right now. I want to buy Bitcoin.
Always. I bought a little bit like 82 and 79, so I'm pretty happy with that. But man, I would have liked to buy a lot more at 82 and 79. And then people think they're like, you're nuts. It's going to 74, 70. Okay, I'll try to find some more money to buy then too. Good.
Yeah. Look through the cushions of the couch.
Yeah, I would love that. But so I guess in context of all of this, then just for you, BitcoinOS, hasn't the sale is starting, correct?
We allowed the community members, people who are already part of the community members, to participate in some kind of sale. There may be a sale coming soon. If that's of interest, people can sort of follow the project.
Yeah,
but it wasn't. We haven't offered a sort of a public sale of tokens. But yeah, we're making great progress, and we're very, very excited because I think, look, Bitcoin is sort of a breakout win. I think it's not only a breakout win for sort of the crypto industry or the financial industry. I think it's also going to be a breakout win for the AI industry. We've sort of spoken about this, but I think AI is going to be commoditized, and the one thing that's going to be scarce in this new digital environment is going to be BTC. So I think Bitcoin's got years and years and years ahead of it of just winning. And what we need to do is also build an economy around that, and provide people with more ways to use their Bitcoin, so that people don't have to sell their Bitcoin. They can borrow against their Bitcoin. They can actually use their Bitcoin. And so, that's coming. And
that's
ideally
what we need.
You can end this war that exists between Bitcoin and crypto, and crypto and crypto. Like all of crypto is at war with each other. And I think we can do that by integrating all of these systems with Bitcoin as a unifying hub for all of crypto.
I'm not sure if Nick Carter said it or he quoted it, but there was some quote that I think I saw on his X, and it was something to the effect of, it was asked in an article like, why is there no solidarity? And he was like, because crypto people hate each other. They just hate everything else more. So they get together every once in a while to like get rid of a bad SEC, but the minute that's gone, it's back at each other's throats and full cannibalism. It never will be, because I fundamentally, and I think at the most basic level, like, people disagree on what Bitcoin crypto should be. But these groups are never getting along. You're not getting like Brad Garlinghouse and Michael Saylor to like high five about Ripple. You know what I mean? Like, it's maybe about Bitcoin to some degree, but
I have a bit of a simpler, I think, explanation. And I think it comes back to what we were talking about about the confusion between Bitcoin and everything else. Because if everything is like Bitcoin, then it's a zero-sum game, right? One of these things is going to be like the world currency, and everything else sort of doesn't matter. And even if things do matter, if Bitcoin is a little bit higher, then Sol and Ether are a little bit lower, and vice versa. But if these are systems which are actually creating value, then you're in an expanding pie. And so the reason that people who hold Google shares don't hate people who hold, Tesla shares or Novartis shares is because each of those things is actually producing something regardless of whether or not the other one does well. Money is a fixed pie, right? Whereas everything else is an expanding pie. And so the more things try to compete with Bitcoin and get confused for Bitcoin, the more hate there is. And the more things are actually generating real value for Bitcoiners and for everyone else, the less hate there is. And so if we can turn Bitcoin into a productive asset and integrate the rest of crypto into that turbine of monetary energy, I think we can reduce the hate. And we can end on that note of kumbaya.
So yeah, and like the ability to safely, for whatever degree, as safely as possible, to be able to borrow against your Bitcoin and never sell it, especially if they don't change the tax code, will be the biggest. That will be the biggest thing I think that happens to this industry. Period. I mean, listen, I'm not saying I want Bank of New York Mellon or State Street or Goldman or whatever, but for your average American investor who's not a libertarian deeply down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, who does view it just as an investment or an asset class, for them to be able to just put that in their Schwab portfolio next to their Tesla shares and their, mutual funds and borrow against it and not take a taxable sale and just treat it as that's when we're going to have made it for TradFi.
Yeah,
man. I like the kumbaya moment better than my closing. Sorry, I blew it. Guys, give Yago a follow on X here. Bitcoin bullshit. I think we need like a new, I was thinking this, we need like a new intro, my intro music that's like for every show. I can't anymore, like I need we need a Bitcoin and bullshit, like quick trailer. Like maybe you go bullshit and I go Bitcoin and then it's like, Need a trailer. You need something unique for us, as long as you commit to sticking around with me here on Thursdays.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Will be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. Everybody give Yago a follow, and otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Later, man. Bye. Oh, I forgot right before I'm going to let Yago go, but I do. LBANK. See, I'm the worst sometimes. They're right there. You can see it. It's down the description. But what they're offering you for signing up using that link right below, $20 USDT, up to a referral bonus of 250, trade to earn up to 100% cash back. As I always say to you, and they'd be comfortable with me telling you, trade on exchanges and then get your coins into self-custody. You don't want to be on the exchange when $1.5 billion worth of ETH. I'm not saying it would happen there, but when something like that happens and gets stolen, like happened in Bybit, you don't want that. But you can trade up to 1,000 pairs there. You can trade there with no KYC. So it means largely available. Pretty awesome. So guys, go check out LBANK. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow for the Friday 5. Later.
That's dope.